The scope of Iran-linked APT33 cyber attacks has been revealed. GandCrab criminals are using more sophisticated tactics. A new type of malware was using Slack to communicate. Chrome gets an important update. Huawei sues the US, and Germany sets tougher security rules for telecom companies. And people who invest in cryptocurrency often don't know what they're getting into. Now I'd like to share some words about our sponsor, Akamai. You're familiar with cloud security, but what about security at the edge? With the world's only intelligent edge platform, Akamai stops attacks at the edge before they reach your apps, infrastructure, and people. Their visibility into 178 billion attacks per day means that Akamai stays ahead of the latest threats, including responding to zero-day vulnerabilities. With 24/7 365 Security Operations Center support around the globe and over 300 security experts in-house, Akamai surrounds and protects your users wherever they are, at the core, in the cloud, or at the edge. If you're going to RSA this year, visit Akamai in the North Hall, booth 6153, to take part in their Crack the Code Challenge for an opportunity to win a new 3D printer. Akamai, intelligent security starts at the edge. Learn more at Akamai, that's akamai.com/security. And we thank Akamai for sponsoring our show. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Thursday, March 7th, 2019. Microsoft told the Wall Street Journal that an Iranian cyber attack campaign hit more than 200 companies over the past 2 years, causing hundreds of millions of dollars in damages. The attacks targeted oil and gas companies and heavy machinery makers in a number of countries, including Saudi Arabia, Germany, the United Kingdom, India, and the U.S. The group sent phishing emails to more than 2,200 people at these companies. Microsoft attributes the attack to Holmium, also known as APT33. The group has been active since at least 2013 and has a history of going after organizations in the aviation and energy sectors. CrowdStrike says criminals using GandCrab ransomware have exhibited a recent shift in tactics. They're now using techniques more often associated with nation-state APT groups, such as manual lateral movement within networks. These observations are consistent with a recent advertising campaign by GandCrab's developer, Pinchy Spider, which was aimed at individuals with knowledge of remote desktop protocol, virtual network computing, and corporate networking. The shift in tactics suggests that Pinchy Spider and its affiliates are hoping to maximize their revenue by launching the type of low-volume, high-return attacks used by sophisticated threat actors. This strategy, which the CrowdStrike researchers call big game hunting, in which threat actors hack into an organization's network and manually deploy the malware. This method is far more effective at getting victims to pay up than widespread untargeted ransomware campaigns, but it requires a great deal of technical skill. Threat groups using SamSam, BitPaymer, and Ryuk ransomware have been observed using these tactics very effectively. GandCrab differs from the ransomware used in those attacks, however, because it requests a ransom payment for each individual infected machine, rather than asking for a lump sum in exchange for decrypting all of an organization's computers. Email account takeover is a tried-and-true method for bad actors to gain access to your data and your network. Asaf Cidon is Vice President of Email Security at Barracuda Networks, and he joins us with the details.
The most common way is to actually phish one of the employees. So to send an employee a phishing email with a link that looks like a sign-in page to a real service, but in fact is just a website owned by the attacker. So a lot of folks would receive emails impersonating Microsoft Outlook or Gmail or perhaps DocuSign or Dropbox. Another way is by basically buying the credential from someone else. So once credentials are stolen, they then get sold oftentimes in the black market, so in the dark web. And so you have this kind of multi-tiered economy of criminals where one set of criminals is just harvesting credentials, then they sell off the credentials to another set of criminals that then might pursue a much more targeted attack against a specific organization.
Now, if I fall victim to this, if someone takes over my account, would I necessarily know right away that something has happened?
No, not necessarily. And this is what makes these accounts so nefarious. So most employees don't actually notice that their account has been taken over. And in fact, attackers take several steps to kind of hide their activity. So one common thing attackers do is they will set up a forwarding rule from that employee's mailbox to forward all the emails externally. So they don't even need to log in anymore to that account, not to trigger any kind of suspicious IP logins. And then even when they launch an actual email campaign from that employee's account, sometimes they will actually delete those emails from the sent items email folder so that the employee won't notice them. And they might even delete any of the responses really quickly when they get received. So we do hypothesize that some of these attackers actually run scripts on the accounts to immediately delete the emails from the sent items folder and immediately delete the replies to the attack. So that's kind of the more sophisticated attackers.
And is it a typical situation that an organization will have not as stringent security when things are coming from inside the organization?
Absolutely. In fact, the vast majority of email security systems, including the ones available on the popular email providers like Office 365, they don't even scan or even have the ability to scan for internal emails. So the common architecture of email security is they sit between the outside world and the mail server. So they only observe traffic from the outside coming in or from the inside coming out, but they have no ability to peek into internal traffic. And so this is what makes these attacks highly successful. Is they're basically running unimpeded. There's nobody really inspecting emails coming from internal sources, and so that's what makes these attacks really dangerous.
And so, what are your recommendations for people and organizations to protect themselves against these sorts of things?
From kind of the most sophisticated side, there are actually now solutions that use artificial intelligence to detect anomalies in internal employee traffic that basically learns, over time, what's a normal pattern of communication for an employee. How do they normally communicate with colleagues? How, what IPs do they log into? What are the inbox forwarding rules they have on their account? And then we look for, any, malicious activity or anomalous activity on any one of these signals. Another good idea is to apply multi-factor authentication. Unfortunately, multi-factor authentication is not an end-all it's not a full solution to this problem. We've actually seen attackers bypass multi-factor authentication by harvesting the SMS code as well as the credential with a fake login page. But still, it makes the life of attackers harder, and definitely a good idea to set it up on all the important SaaS and email systems of an internal organization. And then finally, the last step is probably awareness. So you can run security awareness campaigns to actually simulate these types of attacks. And anytime anybody that's doing any type of financial transaction or dealing with HR information, I would recommend the old-fashioned way of person to person. You're about to send someone a file with a lot of W-2s. It's probably not a bad idea to just verify the email actually came from them, or to get on the phone with them and verify that they actually need it, and to see if it's the correct email address, right? So anytime so that's more like internal procedures, and that's always just really important as well, on top of all the security measures.
That's Asaf Cidon from Barracuda Networks. Researchers at Trend Micro this morning described a new type of information-gathering malware that communicates with an attacker via a Slack channel. The malware is spread through watering hole attacks, potentially targeting people who are interested in political activities. Once it finds itself on a system, it runs a downloader, which downloads a backdoor. This backdoor embeds 2 authorization tokens, allowing it to communicate with the Slack API. It then downloads a file from GitHub and parses it for commands. The output of each command is sent to a private Slack channel where the attacker can read it. The primary target of the malware appears to be the victim's personal communications, and it goes after platforms like Twitter and Skype. The researchers have named the malware Slub because it makes use of Slack and GitHub. They don't know who is behind Slub because the attackers were very good at covering their tracks. Notably, the researchers haven't seen any related attacks in the past, and they've been unable to find any similar malware samples. They believe with strong confidence that it was part of a possible targeted attack campaign, noting that the attackers, who were very sophisticated, clearly showing a strong interest in person-related information. Google's latest Chrome update contains a patch for a high-severity use-after-free vulnerability that's being actively exploited in the wild. The bug is in the browser's File Reader API, which allows Chrome to access local files. Details of the flaw are being kept under wraps until enough users have updated, but Chrome's security and desktop engineering lead said in a tweet, "Seriously, update your Chrome installs, like right this minute." TechCrunch notes that Huawei filed its lawsuit against the U.S. federal government last night, claiming the ban on its products from government use is unconstitutional. Huawei is arguing that Congress violated the Constitution's Bill of Attainder clause by specifically naming the company. The clause forbids legislation that targets a particular person or entity without trial. Most observers doubt Huawei will win the case. Earlier today, Germany's Federal News Agency set stricter security requirements for all telecom equipment vendors, rather than singling out Chinese companies. Under the new rules, critical network equipment will only be used after examination and certification by Germany's BSI Information Security Agency, which assisted in drafting the guidelines. A full version of the requirements will be published later this spring. Facebook has joined Google in rejecting an Australian regulator's proposal that the government oversee how major tech firms rank news articles and advertisements. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission says that companies like Google and Facebook, quote, increasingly perform similar functions as media businesses, end quote, so similar rules should apply. A spokeswoman for Facebook said the proposed level of regulatory intervention was unprecedented. The UK's Financial Conduct Authority published research today warning consumers to exercise prudence when it comes to cryptocurrency. The research consists of 2 surveys which found that many consumers overestimate their knowledge of crypto assets. They often perceive cryptocurrencies as a way to get rich quick and feel like they're investing in tangible assets. One of the surveys found that 1 in 6 consumers hadn't completed any research on the topic before buying cryptocurrencies. Now a moment to tell you about our sponsor, Observit. The greatest threat to businesses today isn't the outsider trying to get in. It's the people you trust, the ones who already have the keys. Your employees, contractors, and privileged users. In fact, a whopping 60% of online attacks today are carried out by insiders. Can you afford to ignore this real and growing threat? With Observit, you don't have to. See, most security tools only analyze computer, network, or system data. But to stop insider threats, you need to see what users are doing before an incident occurs. Observit combats insider threats by enabling your security team to detect risky activity, investigate in minutes, effectively respond, and stop data loss. Want to see it in action for yourself? Try Observit for free. No installation required. Go to observit.com/cyberwire. That's observit.com/cyberwire. And we thank Observit for sponsoring our show. And joining me once again is David Dufour. He's Vice President of Engineering and Cybersecurity at Webroot, and he is coming to us live from RSA Conference. David, having a good time out there, huh?
Yeah, well, it can be a little hectic, especially once you're on day 4. But yeah, things are going pretty good.
What are you seeing out there? What's your take on the show this year?
Well, I got to tell you, David, I've got some really good news for your listeners because it seems like everything has absolutely been automated, integrated, simplified, and they're using pervasive, predictive, zero trust AI, threat detection, security analytics And so it sounds like they're making it so we can stay connected longer, innovate faster, and then stay online safely while we digitally transform our organizations. So I'm feeling like, David, I feel like we fixed it. It's over. We can just check off cybersecurity. It's done.
Going to say, no need for a conference next year, right?
Well,
we got this solved.
I've been talking to some folks, and we're thinking next year we'll just have a big party to, kind of as a going away because we've got it figured out.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right. Well, besides all of those marketing messages, what's the real scoop? What's your sense of where we stand this year?
Well, there's a couple of things really sticking out because they're not here, and we're not seeing a lot of discussion on blockchain. And the last few years, there's been a ton of talk about blockchain and things like that. So I think the lack of noise on that is kind of interesting, and maybe people are realizing that's more of a management audit tool and not something that's in the near term going to be huge in security.
So it's sort of lost its buzzword status.
Yeah, it has, for sure. There's still, everybody's got their AI and ML, which is going to save the day. But some really interesting things that we're seeing discussion is a lot of talk about privacy versus security and how a lot of the things that are making us protect our privacy online are affecting our ability with a lot of the tools we have to actually do security. So, for example, if you're doing maybe I'm picking on HTTPS here, if you have a secure connection from your PC to a server on the internet, your organization isn't able to look at that traffic and not in a way to see what you're doing, but in a way to see where you're going. And a lot of the tools need to be able to monitor that traffic to make sure the bad guys aren't injecting things in that network flow.
So security giveth, security taketh away.
That's exactly right. And I don't know that there's really any answers, but it's nice to see a discussion around how do we find that balance of ensuring people have their privacy, because I'm a huge privacy advocate. But there's got to be some balance where we can ensure people have their privacy, but we're also building the tools we need that'll protect us.
Yeah, it definitely seems like privacy is certainly getting a brighter light shown on it than it has in years past. I'm wondering, what do you see walking around in terms of diversity, people of color? Are we seeing a better representation there?
I got to say we are. I've seen a couple of groups that are from different countries. There's an African group and then folks from the Middle East. So we're seeing from different locations, some South American organizations as well. The countries have their booth, but in general, there's more diversity now. Am I going to say it's diverse? This can be, kind of a slanted show, but I've been going 6 years. They gave me a little badge, thing for my badge. It says Loyalty Plus. I guess I'm some RSA loyalty person now. And I have to say it's getting better. We have a long way to go, though, but it's nice to see inroads being made and a lot of attention being paid to diversity.
What is your sense in terms of overall tone, people's spirits? Are people feeling, do you sense that there's a feeling of optimism?
Well, I think there's a more of a feeling of pragmatism, where I think a couple of years ago we were going to, fix all the world's problems, but where we've landed now is what are the things we can do? How do we do it better? How do we try to make things a little more simpler for people? But I think there's an idea around how do we start simplifying stuff for folks. So pragmatism with the hope of simplifying.
And what are you seeing in terms of folks coming up to the Webroot booth and asking questions? Are you getting good leads, smart questions from people?
So what's ironic, we don't get a lot of leads in terms of new business here. We have a lot of partnerships. It's good for meeting those folks, but we do get a lot of questions, and it allows us to really put our finger on the pulse of what people are wondering about. And endpoint has been a really big topic. We had some EDR for a while where companies were focused on the detection component, but people are really looking for holistic solutions that actually remove or threats if they get on the machine as well. So there's a lot of talk about good old tried and true endpoint technology. And then everybody wants to talk about threat intelligence. It used to be a big buzzword, but it's kind of calmed down. But people are looking for quality threat data to do analysis again.
All right. Well, David, safe travels home. I hope you're able to kick your feet up and relax a little bit when you get there. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of the show.
All right. Thanks, David. It's been great being on.
And that's the CyberWire. Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible, especially our supporting sponsor, Observit, the leading insider threat management platform. Learn more at observit.com. The CyberWire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technology. Our CyberWire editor is John Petrick, social media editor Jennifer Ivan, technical editor Chris Russell, executive editor Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening.